Let's talk about when to write tests for your software and when not to. It may seem obvious that writing tests is beneficial in many ways, and as you gain more experience, you notice more and more advantages. Overall, with good testing coverage, your code is more robust and it saves you time in the long run. But there are times when you should not write tests, and let's talk about that. First of all, there are many types of software testing, and let me quickly describe what types of tests I have in mind so that together we can discuss various real-life scenarios. Unit tests focuses on the smallest part of your application, typically individual functions or methods within a class. Usually, all dependencies are mocked. For example, if your class depends on a data from a database, we should mock the database response to isolate and test the logic within the class itself. In the real life scenario, let's say we have a bug reported that certain data input was passed as integer and we only support string data. In this case, let's say our application threw an exception and it could not continue. In general, a productive approach would be to simply add a test with integer data. We run our tests, they fail. We modify our code, and then our tests pass. The order is important because it might be the quickest approach to fix this bug. We shouldn't even need to spin up or run a complex environment. It is a good example to focus on tests first. We've already established some form of a testing environment in your project. We can simply cover our new case and we don't need to think about other parts of the system that much. Now let's gradually increase complexity of the problem we're facing and how that relates to writing or not writing tests. This time, let's say we're adding a new feature. It could be as simple as web form with multiple fields. Let's assume we know all the requirements and we can work on our implementation because there are no unknown parts at this stage. That would involve probably creating a new route, validating and handling form data, as well as saving everything into the database, for example. As you can imagine, there are many different parts of the system involved. Most likely, we want to have our whole environment set up so that we can gradually build our code, interact with it, and having a general feeling what the user experiences. The goal is not only fulfill the requirements, but also making sure the whole idea makes sense and the implementation is to the best of our knowledge. Writing tests should start as quickly as possible. We can break down our work into parts, and as soon as we work on the first part, we want to have a test coverage for that part as well. There's also an element of different type of testing. Not only unit tests are useful, but also would be good to think about functional testing, where we test multiple parts of our application communicating together. For example, we write a scenario where we submit valid data to the form and we expect from application a certain response. We also check if data is saved in our database, for example. The final example I want to talk about is when a completely new idea comes along for our application, something that we've not worked on before. It happens more often than we think in real life, and it's more or less what software development is all about. For example, let's assume we've decided our application needs an integration with a payment provider. Let's also assume this is an area we've not worked before, and we need to work this out as we go. So the approach I would take is more of a creating a proof of concept first. This may involve code written outside of application, perhaps validating required authentication details, maybe using sandbox environment to test various scenarios. Essentially, writing tests for my current code at this point has no priority whatsoever. The goal in my mind is to get the full picture from start to finish because, in my opinion, it saves time. Once I'm convinced I can make this work, I can move on from proof of concept to implementation. And when I want my implementation to be commercially available or future-proofed, there's no way I would skip on writing tests. Based on those three examples, in my opinion, when the area of work is big and unknown, focusing on tests can be a bit overwhelming, noisy, and maybe can interrupt some innovation or creativity. I'm not saying we should skip on tests, but there are times where I don't write tests, especially in the beginning when a lot of code can be thrown away. Final example I would skip on writing tests would be picking up a new technology, maybe trying out a new programming language or new ideas. It's that proof of concept stage I found myself in I would skip testing code the most. Once I know exact path my code is going to take, that's where I know my code is only going to benefit from writing tests. I hope this was interesting topic to listen to. Let me know what you think in the comments and I'll see you in the next video.